Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, apologize for my absence. I guarantee you all these issues are very important and very important to the state of Washington and to all of us. I made in my opening statement comments about the homework gap, and so I want to come back to that. I know that my colleague from Hawaii brought this up as well, but I think Commissioner Rosenworcel, you know, because you visited Washington State, you looked at both the education gap, but also we focused a lot on the healthcare gap too. So both of them are incredibly important, and I could see you were a little shocked when I said some of our numbers because you were thinking, oh, wait, in Washington you still have, yes, that's true. Even in Washington we can still have a gap. So following up on what my colleague from Hawaii brought up, how can we address the E-rate issue with the authority that you have?
Sure, we have adequate authority right now so that all of our nation's schools could loan out Wi-Fi hotspots, routers, get every student connected at home. We got 50 million kids who were kicked out of the classroom, but not all of them could go to online school. So let's use the E-rate program to meet this moment. We've already used this authority back in 2011, 2012. The statute mentions classrooms. Those classrooms are online. We also have forbearance authority to forbear from that to the extent the chairman thinks it's an impediment. Let's not get tied up. Let's figure out to help students so no child's left offline.
So why aren't we doing this?
Well, despite my understanding of the statute, I don't believe that I have convinced my colleagues, but I know that you are leading on a piece of legislation to compel this agency to use E-rate and make sure every kid gets connected, and I hope we can proceed and use the summer months to get it done.
Well, thank you. I couldn't agree more that we just can't afford this gap. Just can't afford it. Can't afford it. The crisis has brought into focus many inequities, but clearly the inequity by not having good broadband access for education is one of them. So I could say the same thing. I think Commissioner O'Reilly, you know, I know the chairman's got a tough job. He's got to fit all these people in. So last week we had a panel, too many people on the panel to get the time and questions in. So I'm going to give you a question today.
Sure.
So last year, the international community rejected the FCC's inadequate protection for weather spectrum adjacent to the 24 gigahertz band. Instead, they adopted a more stringent protection based on sound science and analysis. And I was part of a bipartisan coalition of senators who believe the FCC had put that weather data at risk. We had many conversations about this with our colleagues. So what is the FCC doing now to ensure that the domestic wireless companies will comply with these international interference protections? And will you commit to working with NASA and NOAA to ensure that these protections on interference are improved?
I'll always work with federal agencies and partners. In terms of what we're doing now, we have the work proceedings that I was there in Egypt. At some point, they'll be transferred into an FCC order, and we'll have a chance to consider it. They take a number of years to actually, it takes a little bit of time to actually put before us. We were voting on previous, every 4 years, we were doing a couple of them catch up during the Wheeler days. So it'll take a little bit of time before they're adopted into our proceedings.
So you are going to adhere to those international issues that were brought up, saying that there was inadequate protection?
We will put that into the item and have an opportunity to consider it at that time. That was the position of the United States, and they agreed to it.
Commissioner Rosenworcel, can I ask you about this and the legato issue? I mean, why not go back? If so many people are involved now saying, hold up, time out, like, this is like all of these issues fighting around. I mean, shouldn't we listen to these international standards and make sure they're implemented? Shouldn't we look in the legato case and say, well, wait just a minute, let's look at this? Okay. I mean, to me, aviation safety is critical, and it bothers me to think that our aviation system of the future is going to be hampered if that also is not adequately addressed.
Okay, so a lot there. The first
Yes.
was the 24 gigahertz band, and I agree with my colleague. We're going to have to take the standards that were developed at the World Radio Conference, put them into our policies. I understand those to be more stringent in terms of protecting weather services than what the FCC initially proposed. We'll have to do that, and because I believe those have the force of law, we should do that in short order. With respect to legato, I want to be clear that I respect deeply the work of the FCC's engineers. They've worked on this issue for 10 years, and so many adjustments and changes have been made over time, including an extraordinary reduction in power levels, a much larger guard band. So I think their work is solid. But I also want to respect you and your point, which is there's a lot of concern about the continuing viability of GPS as a result of this decision. So I think balancing those equities, and out of respect for you and your colleagues who have said that they're concerned about this, if the chairman was interested in circulating a decision to us, staying the decision we recently reached on the L-band, that would certainly be something I would support, because we've got to iron this kind of stuff out if we really want to have a big and bold 5G future.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see my time has expired.